Good afternoon, Mavuno Downtown. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here once again to bring God's word. I give thanks to God and I honor God for giving me this opportunity and privilege to be here. I also want to honor the leadership of the our network, led by Pastor David Kuria and Pastor Jojo. They are incredible readers, and we love them. And thank you also for allowing me to, just even share at the pulpit. I don't take it for granted. All right. So I'm back. And I wish to confirm that, yes, Sam Kibara is my name. And I also want to confirm that, yes, I have a family. And yes, my wife, of 19 years is right here, Wahoo. And we also have, results to show for those years of marriage. In the name of our two girls, two teenagers, both of them doing exams right now, and we thank God for bringing them this far. In fact, we have been telling people that we are parenting. So if you know what that means, you are parenting teenagers. And that's a whole new ballgame. But that one you can come to Leah and we can discuss further. And we can tell you how to navigate the season in a good way. So we thank God for the families. So I'm really happy that we have been going through a series, Winning at Home. That is hacks for modern families, parenting hacks for modern families. And really, we have been given what we would call a bonus, because it's not usual that we have a 5-week series. But this was important, just like we will see, that it was important to God. Families and parenting is important to God in days past. So it's been a journey, and it's been eye-opening and transformative, even for me, even as I have listened to Pastor Caro, and even for me to be able to come and give the word to us. So just as a way of recap, we started off by looking at what it means to raise successful kids. That was the very first Sunday of October. And we saw that when we raise our kids, we learned that worldly success without spiritual success is actually a failure. And so our focus is not going to be worldly success. And the world is pushing us there. It's pushing us to, look at success from the lens of worldly success, materiality, consumerism, things like that. And then we came back the second week, and Pastor Caro took us through the aspect of building a family altar. And the reason for family altar is just to be able to build spiritual rhythms within the family so that we can lead our children into a greater inheritance than the worldly inheritance. And in that week, we learned that the greatest inheritance you can leave your kids is a strong faith. I know during the financial series, we talked about, leaving an inheritance, which could also be material. But the biggest inheritance and the greatest inheritance that you can leave your children is actually strong faith. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't leave material faith, but it is actually strong faith. And the third week, I was privileged to bring you the sermon on training up a child. And we said that there is a part that God intends us to play in this whole game. It is not all that just comes to be, but it is a part that God expects us to do, and we'll actually be looking at that. And we said that it is not luck that you need, it is actually training. So as parents, we are expected to actually do training. We are expected to discipline. We are expected to instruct our children. And then we came last week, and Pastor Caro took us through raising creators, not consumers. And we said that from the very beginning, we are to lead our children. We are to guide our children not to be consumers. And the world has structured it in such a way that we become consumers, because when we become consumers, we support other people's industries. So we are not to become consumers, but we are to become producers. And that's a mindset, creators, that we need to teach our children so that they become problem solvers, they become contributors, not just passive consumers of entertainment, of comfort, and so on and so forth. And in these messages, we have been encouraging you to take the next step in your spiritual journey as a family. Maybe even as, we look at how we tie up this whole sermon, because today we are going to be looking at the sermon titled Family on Mission, or Family on a Mission if you like it. And so maybe when you look back at in your family, of origin, and you start thinking about the spiritual formations that you got from that family and what you have carried up to now, maybe you could ask your neighbor a question. How do I stay spiritually engaged as part of a family? How do we stay spiritually engaged as a family? Turn to your neighbor. You help the preacher to preach. Ask them, what is it? How do you spiritually engage? Maybe for some of us, it's just, we pray before food. And that is as much as the spiritual engagement goes. So discuss what is it that happens in your family. What spiritual engagement as a family? For singles, yes, how do you interact as a family? With yourself in terms of, just becoming spiritually engaged. And as we think about what you are hearing from your, from your neighbor, your good neighbor. And I hope now at least the ice has been broken, so our fellowship will continue beyond this. But what I want to say is that for many of us, spiritual engagement remains service level. And so what I want to say today is that family is part, and it is a center of God's plan for the happiness and progress of his children. Now, here's the thing. In the entire Bible story, both Old and New Testament, the setting of the Bible is majorly on a family setting. Even when we talk about Jesus, we talk about Jesus as the son of. Even when we talk in all the characters, all the people we talk about Abraham, we talk about Isaac, all these settings are majorly stories around the family setting. So the family setting is important to God. And the Holy Bible teaches us that God established families from the very beginning. Adam and Eve, it was a family. And it shows us many examples of families. Some ideal, some not so ideal. But nevertheless, they are families, just like we are today. There are some families that are in ideal areas. There are others who it's not as much as you would have liked it. Perhaps you would have wanted it better. But nevertheless, that's the family that God has given to us. And it shows us, a few known examples of families in the Bible. In the Old Testament, we find Abraham, Isaac, Jacob in just one genealogy there, all following God's command to marry and to have children. So we would see at a certain age, God instructs them to marry and then to have children. So there seems like there is a plan God has for families. Abraham and Sarah exercised faith and finally enjoyed the blessings that came with having their son Isaac. And you see that in Genesis 21. And under the Lord's direction, Abraham's servant traveled a long distance to find Rebekah, Elisha's woman, to be Isaac's wife. Genesis 24. If it was not important, it will not even be recorded. Would just have been told, and Isaac grew and married and got children. And that would be the end of the story. But we see the whole story of how everything happened being told in Genesis 24. And Isaac's son Jacob worked for many years in order to marry and establish his own family, which became the house of Israel. And we see that in Genesis 29 and 30. So that begins to tell us that the family unit is an important part of God's mission. And just in case someone is seated and is saying, but all those are Old Testament, we are in the New Testament now. We come to Ephesians 6, and Paul is addressing families and talks to children and parents, and that becomes our first reading. And so our first reading is going to come from Ephesians 6, verses 1 to 4. And I'll be reading from the New Living Translation. And it says, "Children, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do." So that's like an opening statement that says, this is the barest minimum expectation. And so, we are addressing children who can hear. And perhaps, for some of us, we are still children of our parents, isn't it? For others, we have not yet left your mother and father and joined together to form a unit. Up to that point is when the Bible says that you shall leave your mother and father, is as much as bride obedience goes. I know that I've met couples in Doha or even in marriage. And they are coming, perhaps they have a difference. And the difference is because one of them has been told something by the parent, and they say, now I can't go against my parent, regardless of what my spouse thinks. And that's why I'm saying obedience, bride obedience, goes up to the point of marriage. But let's leave that for another day. Let's go to verse 2, because that's where I now find instructions for families. To children, honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. Now, why is it that this is the only commandment, the first commandment with a promise? How come the others in front there were not given a promise? Have you ever thought about it? Why is it that this one that has actually the aspect of parents has a promise? In my own interpretation, it could be, it's just my thoughts, it begins to show us that God really, really is concerned about families and wants the family unit to remain. To the extent that it is not enough to just tell you what to do, that it is important for me to give you a promise. And the promise is to maintain you there, is to keep you there. Because you see, you can say, I have honored, and you leave. But to keep you there, the promise is given. And the promise is in verse 3. If, you have to look at the words. If, what does that mean? If you continue honoring, isn't it? So it says, if you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you. And you will have a long life on earth. Now, guys, so we can just finish this thing here. What do you exist for? See, you just exist for so that your things may go well. The Bible has not stipulated which things. It just says, if you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you. Now, see, you can now just replace here and just say, the contract will go well with you. The tender will go well with you. The promotion will go well with you. The money part will go well with you. It doesn't specify. It says things will go well. You have been going back to school. You have been working hard. You have been looking for the people you know. Because you have to know people. So that that thing can go through. Guess where your promise is? Go back to the village. Honor your father and mother. And an interesting finding is here right again. This scripture does not tell us that honor your father and mother if they are good. Just imagine. It just tells us honor your father and mother. So even if they are the ones who have caused some wounds, because sometimes we work with the father wounds, we work with mother wounds, because things have happened. Imagine the Bible is saying, honor your father and mother. If you do, your things will go well, and that is not enough. That is not enough. Listen to this. And you will have a long life on earth. Ay. Can you imagine? Longevity has a connection to our honor of our parents. Think about that. I know many explanations are given rather than just an instruction. Honor your mother and father. And just in case we are the father and the mother, so we are starting to look and say, yeah, they should honor me. Verse 4 is for you. Okay? And it says this. Fathers, I have no idea why the mothers were not addressed here. There are parts in the Bible that actually addresses, but let's assume I may have my own thoughts as to why it's fathers, because you're expected to be the leaders of your families. So when the word is given, you have a special position of authority in a family. So whatever you say, you're not just saying for yourself. Whatever you are saying as a word for your family from God. Your words are strong. That's why we always say that whatever you say to your children should be words of encouragement, should be positive words, should be, even though sometimes you need to correct, you need to discipline, you need to rebuke, your word must always be directed to positive and encouraging words to your children. Why? Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. So it's like Paul knew who men are. Men have a way, we have a way that there's a way I can talk to my daughters and they will not recover in a week, in a month, because the word has cut deep. And the Bible is cautioning us that fathers, be careful. Be careful with your words. What words do your children hear from you? Mostly. Yes, you could be very good in disciplining. You could be very good in, giving instructions and all that. But what are they hearing? Are you the source of encouragement? And that's what we are being addressed. We're being controlled. So that then we do not rise up to a position that does not edify the family. So Apostle Paul spoke about these family relationships. He counseled the children and also talked about fathers being able to nurture and becoming God's representative in our families, being the priests, becoming the source of encouragement, becoming the pillars that represent God. Because the family unit is an important foundation and a pillar in God's kingdom. And if it's not happening within the family front, then the kingdom suffers. And that's why we are talking about having a family on mission, having a spiritually engaged family, as opposed to having one that is spiritually disengaged. And just to be able to help us to see what differences exist between spiritually engaged families that serve, that are able to grow in spiritual maturity together, then we look at some 5 aspects. And the first aspect I want to look at is in terms of spiritual growth and maturity. And here we see that spiritually engaged families will grow spiritually through active obedience, real-life ministry experiences. Faith becomes practical and personal. Children see God's power at work through service. Parents model authenticity in their spiritual lives and in their faith. They also model spiritual disciplines to their children, such as Bible devotion, prayer. They also encourage children to know and have a relationship with God personally. That's a spiritually engaged family. Whereas spiritually disengaged families, faith becomes passive and a routine. Religious discipline replaces real engagement. Children view faith as optional rather than a lifestyle. Parents here rarely discuss or indulge their children on spiritual matters. They leave the children to discover God and spirituality on their own. We don't guide them. We don't instruct them, as we saw in the word in Deuteronomy, in our first sermon, that we shall talk to them when they are sitting, when they are standing, when they are sleeping, when they are walking, every time, so that we instruct them in their spiritual formations. And I gave examples and said how other faiths may take advantage of early life to make sure that they have entrenched spirituality in our children. The second thing we find is family unity and relationships. How do spiritually engaged families look like? They are unified together by God's love, and therefore they show Christ-like love, even when they are on diverse outlooks in their lives. Sometimes we don't always have to agree as a family, but even when we disagree, do we remain unified? Or do we go all out and even disagree openly out there and give away the mission? We have seen that happens. Parents remain a sign of God's authority over their children, and families serve through a shared mission and teamwork and build empathy, patience, unity, and just purpose together. Whereas on the disengaged side, family members grow apart. Sometimes they disagree and they don't talk on years on end simply because they disagreed on a certain aspect. Each of them pursue their personal interest. There is no shared mission, and parents prioritize business and convenience and separate family activities from faith. So they are all separate. And then the third thing is character, values, and formation. Families that are engaged exhibit the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. These are modeled. Servant leadership is modeled by the parents. Children learn perseverance, empathy, and just knowing that this is what is expected of them. Families that are disengaged in this state pursue comfort and self-interest. They expect to be served rather than serve others. And they choose where it is easy over commitment and reward seeking rather than responsibility. And so it looks good, but it's disjointed. And then the fourth thing is a sense of purpose and legacy. Families that are engaged see themselves as part of God's mission, influencing others and shaping future generations, building lasting spiritual legacy, and families share testimonies of God's work through service, cast vision for family ministry impact. On the other hand, families that are disengaged feel directionless. They are very self-focused. Their family values success, not significance, and they focus more on worldly things, careers, schools, progress and things like that, rather than God's mission. And finally, we have community and support, families that are engaged spiritually. Create and belong to a Christian community or a family that brings encouragement and accountability, and they pray together and they're able to do life together. Like in this church, we have what we call the discipleship groups. Do you have people who are walking with you? And church becomes a place of belonging and growth. So it is not a place we go, but it is a place we belong and a place where we experience growth. Whereas on the other hand, parents feel isolated and unsupported. The families feel isolated and unsupported, even in times of need. Church feels distant and impersonal, and parents here may keep to themselves and be disengaged in ministry, or even withdraw without, especially when facing challenges, instead of seeking the community support, just knowing that we can't do this life by ourselves. So God intended people to live in community and in fellowship. And that's why the model that was of the families of origin, where we came from, was working. Because children belong to the community. They were brought up by the community. So when you did wrong, we didn't have to wait for your parents to come and do the disciplining. The community supported what was happening at home. But today's world is one that you cannot even touch, you cannot even speak to the child of your neighbor because you don't even know them. So even when things are going wrong, even when things are going haywire, you just observe. Many times we are helpless. And it feels like doing parenting in today's world is overwhelming. It sounds like, overwhelmed, exhausted, even wondering whether this was the script. You're wondering, who told me? Who lied to me that the family way was the way? You get the feeling. Yet there is joy in it, but there is work to be done. And that's where we want to speak about today. We want to touch on that today. Because I do know, especially for the kind of demography we are, those times come. They have come to me and Wahoo here, where you feel overwhelmed, where the children are quite, you're looking at them, you're wondering where or what, who visited them while you are away. Because the things they are exhibiting do not look like anything that you have taught them. Those moments come. They will come if they have not. Those good children who you are looking at and they look like small angels, so you want to be friends with them. And we said it is not yet time for you to be friends. Wait, there is a time. After they have become young adults, now the relationship you need to have is actually become a friend, to become a consultant. That time is coming. But for these first 18 years, it's going to be intensive. And the intensity is going to reduce as you draw closer to adulthood. But God is asking you to be present. God is asking you to be engaged. God is asking you to train, to instruct, so that you can enjoy peace in years to come. And so for those who sometimes it becomes overwhelming, I want to share the words of Matthew 11, 28 to 30. It says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Perhaps media team, if you could put NIV and see, because I think that's the one most people are used to. Come to me, or I think this is still, is this NIV? Yes. Come to me, all you who are weary and and burden. I think there's one that says, and you're carrying heavy burdens, and will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, for I am gentle. Anyway, I think it's the same. But let me look at this, because I want us to be able to pick this and be able to apply it even in our family situation. This particular scripture is not just addressing the family aspect, but is addressing every other aspect that sometimes becomes overwhelming. For some of us, maybe it's something different that is overwhelming you today. But God is seeming to be giving us a way of responding to these situations. He's saying, come to me if you are weary and who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. So he gives an automatic promise that when you come to me, I'll give you rest. How is it? He's not telling us, I'll remove the burdens. But he's saying, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. So the instruction seems to be that when we are burdened, that we are going to go to God and ask or his way of bringing up our children, or even in whatever situation we are going through, we are going to go to God and do it God's way. That's what God is asking us today. Come to me, learn from me. I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So it seems to tell us that when you do family with God, even when you go through those burdens, and some of them are heavy, ask the fathers when they are on duty, changing diapers. It can never be easy. You ask yourself, has there never been all these scientists? There is nobody who has come up with a machine that can change diapers. I mean, those are the kind of burdens, you're like, okay, I've had enough. I'm burdened enough by things out there. Surely, when will this retro thing understand that they don't need to create more work for me, more burdens? And it can be overwhelming. When kids become nocturnal and you have work by the day, it's not easy. But there's joy. We can find joy by saying, this is mission, not work. Family on mission. You're going to be changing that diaper, with the Bible verses. Because you're doing it, this is ministry. This is not work. You'll be asking, okay, when next do you want? You can add me another day to be doing this duty. It is no longer the burden, because you are doing it knowing that you are preparing the next generation. That's the mindset that God wants us to go through life with, because we will go through burdens. And so let's take God's yoke. And so the one thing I want you to remember in this message is that family, as we do family, it is not a distraction, but rather it is a platform for mission. Families are not a distraction from mission, but they are a platform for mission. So whatever family God has given you that family so that you can do mission. And God has given us different missions. And so as you serve in your areas that God has called you, do it with your family. So you don't have to choose between becoming a good parent, an effective employee, a business owner, a faithful extended family member, a successful discipler. You don't need to separate all these spheres of life for you, but instead you can weave them together by letting your family become part of your mission, and it fuels your mission. So as we draw to the close and as we wrap up this message and the whole series, we are saying that we want to become a family on mission. But there are some paradigms that exist in the world that are distracting us from becoming a family on mission. And I want to look at the two and then look at the ideal as the third of becoming a family on mission. So the first paradigm that we find in the world is where it is either family or mission. So here we see families and ministry as competing. You are either investing in your children and spouse, or you are serving God and discipling others, but you can't do both. So you find that people are separating the two, and you're doing one at the expense of the other. And so some people throw themselves into ministry at the cost of their homes. We have seen that happen. And so their children grow up resenting church, and their spouse feel like abandoned. And through the ministry may look good and may thrive on the outside, on the inside it's broken. On the other hand, people may protect their families so much that they pull back from any meaningful ministry. They say, I'll serve God later when my kids are all grown up. So either way, it is family or mission. And this leaves the family divided, and ultimately it doesn't work. One of them thrives, the other suffers. And that's not God's plan on how, as families, we need to do our missions. And that's the first paradigm. And that's not the ideal paradigm. The second paradigm is family and mission. This one sounds better, but nevertheless, it's still not the ideal. Now, here, people recognize that both family and ministry are important. So they try to manage their time well and give each side a fair share. They build careful boundaries. That is, there is family time, there is church time, and there is work time. It looks like balance, and it can work for a while. But here, the problem is, it creates separate worlds. Your kids may never catch your passion for God because ministry happens away from them. Your disciples may never see you live out your faith in the mess of daily life. So they only see you on a Sunday becoming good, because you only let them see the ministry side. And honestly, it's exhausting to keep all compartments running smoothly. Many people burn out here. So the first one leads to disjointed. Second one leads to burnout because you are trying so hard to balance the two. And that's where most of us are, including myself. Sometimes I find that I'm just trying to maintain a balance, and it can be overwhelming. You know, when you have a full week, you have a whole weekend full of ministry and all that, it can sound overwhelming. And so the third paradigm that Jesus modeled is the ideal paradigm, and it's what we are looking at today, and that is family on mission. This is where we stop separating the two and instead look for ways of integrating them. You say our family is part of our mission, and our mission includes our family. So instead of leaving the kids at home while you go serve, you bring them along and involve them. Instead of trying to create extra ministry opportunities to disciple people, you invite people into your everyday life and do life together. They come into your home. You join in certain things that you do, and you let yourselves do together. So that's why we say that family is not a distraction from mission, but rather it's a platform for mission. So, which paradigm are you currently subscribing to? Are you family or mission? Are you family and mission? Or are you faithfully walking as a family on mission? A little while ago, we started serving in the parenting ministry. That is Leah. So we've been serving in Leah for about 15 years. But before then, when we were out in Mavuno Mashariki, where we were since the start, we served in Mizizi, we served in Doa, and we also served in Lea. But when we went through a sermon like this, at some point, we heard about family missions. And with my wife, we sat together and asked which mission would allow us to serve together. And that's how we actually went to Lea. Now, we started doing Lea when our kids were toddlers. And in some of the Lea classes, we would have people who have teenagers. So you can imagine you are trying to tell people what to do with teenagers, and you have toddlers. You don't have moral authority. But you just cast that burden where I have shown you. You cast it to the Lord, and God gives you wisdom to rise. And we have been able to sit under, many wise couples, including the authors of these, the Mukorwes, the Anzayas, all of them. And we have gained tremendous wisdom that we share with families together, including yesterday. We were in a Lea class with the current class, and it gives us joy. We have been able to do missions. On this family, we were sent off to DRC Congo to launch Lea in French. The same Lea that we do here is done in French in Congo and the rest of the Francophone countries because the manual was translated. And we were sent off there. We have been there twice. This is twice or thrice in Congo. Just to be able to train trainers of these, train facilitators of Lea so that they can continue to do this. And the other day, I received a message from someone. In fact, they just reached me out and said, the lessons that you gave us in Goma some time ago were really helpful to us. Now, what has that done to our children? Now, our teenagers, now they are almost, now we have been, relegated to negotiators. You negotiate, even anything you have to negotiate. You can't just, the powers have diminished a bit in our house. And we have accepted. So, today, our daughters will come home and tell us, guess what, Mom, Dad? Today I saw a family that needs to come for Lea. They can look at that family and identify, this one needs Lea. They will see kids in a wedding and say, hey, Dad, these ones need Lea. They know what that means. They go telling, even their teachers in school. We have been called to their school to talk about parenting. Their teachers know that my parents do parenting. So, because we are seeing like some parents are disturbing you, please call them to talk to your parents. They understand what goes on. Sometimes we call them to help in to see what this mission is about, so that they don't have to be left behind. And so, that's what we are talking about today. We are saying, where is God calling you to be a family on mission? And I've seen many families, even in this church, that are actually doing family on mission. You're serving with your children. I've seen children coming up, and actually you see the children are serving in their own right. And that is commendable. So I just want to, say that family is not a distraction from mission, but rather it's a platform for mission. So if you're feeling overwhelmed today, hear this. God is calling you to do more. He's calling you to live differently. Stop separating family from mission. Instead, bring them together under his yoke. Family is not a distraction from mission. It is a platform for mission. And when you live this way, it's not only will you thrive, but your children, your disciples, your community will also flourish with you, because they are able to see what God is doing with, for, and among you. So whatever it is you're doing, whether it is in the office, how is it that you can make it a mission? You are on a mission. Even at workplace, you're on a mission. In your family, wider family, you're on a mission. In your neighborhood, your family on a mission. And that's what God is calling us to do. But God is also not leaving us on our own. God is actually giving us His word to be able to navigate. And that's why I want us to watch just half a minute of a video, just telling us what we need to navigate this journey of parenting. Media team.
The only way to be an effective parent is a parent on your knees. We're not smart enough to know what our kids will face. We're not omniscient. We don't have all the power. But the greatest thing that you bring to your parenting, you know what it is? The greatest thing that you bring to your parenting is your dependence upon the Lord.
Says that the only way to be an effective parent is to parent on your knees. The greatest tool you bring to parenting is having a Bible on your lap. Having a Bible with you. It will guide you. It will help you in your entire parenting.